The stars had always been silent, and humanity had learned to accept that loneliness. For 60 years, Earth sent messages into the void. Radio waves carried greetings in 1,000 languages. Probes launched with golden records showing human culture, music, and hope. The response was always the same: nothing. Commander Jake Morrison stood on the observation deck of Station Liberty, watching Earth rotate below. The blue and green planet looked peaceful from orbit, fragile and beautiful. Jake had spent 5 years on the station, managing defense satellites and monitoring space traffic. It was quiet work, almost boring. That was about to change forever. The sensors screamed first, not the gentle ping of asteroid detection or satellite malfunction, but a full emergency alarm that Jake had only heard in training drills. He ran to the command center, his magnetic boots clanging against the metal floor. The screen showed something impossible. 47 massive objects had just appeared at the edge of the solar system. "What am I looking at?" Jake demanded. The technician, a young woman named Amy Chen who worked the civilian engineering contracts, pulled up the data. Her hands shook as she typed. "They're ships, Commander. They just appeared out of nowhere. No acceleration burn, no entry signature. They weren't there, and then they were." Jake felt his stomach drop. This was it. First contact. Humanity's dream for generations. Open all communication channels. Broadcast welcome messages in every language we have. They sent the signals. Mathematics, music, images of peace. The reply came 30 seconds later, but not in words. The alien ships accelerated toward Earth at impossible speeds, crossing distances that should take days in mere hours. Their weapons fired before they even reached Mars orbit. The destruction of Mars Station took 12 seconds. 300 people died instantly, vaporized by energy weapons that burned hotter than the sun. Jake watched the feed cut to static and felt something cold settle in his chest. This wasn't first contact. This was an invasion. Earth's defense fleet launched immediately. 23 military vessels, built for peacekeeping and asteroid defense, rose to meet the alien armada. They were outgunned from the start. The alien ships moved with precision, their weapons cutting through human shields like paper. Jake ordered Station Liberty to engage, knowing it was suicide. The battle lasted 4 hours. When it ended, Earth's orbital defense network was gone. Burning wreckage floated in the darkness. Tombs for thousands of soldiers and civilians. Jake's station took 3 direct hits. The hull breached in 17 places, and half his crew died before they could reach the escape pods. Jake made it to an escape pod with Amy and 6 others. As they fell toward Earth, he watched the alien fleet take position above the planet. 47 ships, each the size of a city, blocked out the stars. Then the message came. Broadcast on every frequency, translated into every human language: "You are conquered. Surrender within 14 planetary rotations or face extinction. Resistance is futile. Compliance is survival." The voice was cold, mechanical, without emotion. Jake's pod burned through the atmosphere, and he could see cities below, lights blazing in the darkness. Billions of people who had just learned they were not alone in the universe, and that their new neighbors wanted them dead or enslaved. The pod crashed in the desert outside Las Vegas. Jake kicked open the hatch, breathing Earth air for the first time in 5 years. It smelled like dust and sage. Amy helped the injured crew members out while Jake activated his emergency beacon. Military recovery teams would find them eventually. "Commander, look at that," Amy said, pointing at the sky. Even through the daylight, Jake could see them, dark shapes hanging in orbit, blotting out sections of the blue sky. The alien ships visible from the ground, a constant reminder that Earth was no longer alone, no longer safe, no longer free. Recovery helicopters arrived within an hour. They flew Jake and his surviving crew to Peterson Space Force Base in Colorado, where the remnants of Earth's military command had gathered. The base was chaos. Soldiers ran between buildings. Civilians screamed questions at overwhelmed officers, and somewhere in the distance, air raid sirens wailed. General Nathan Price met Jake in the command center. The general looked like he had aged 10 years in the past day. His uniform was stained with coffee, and his eyes were red from lack of sleep. "Morrison, glad you made it. We need everyone who knows how to fight in space," Nathan said, shaking Jake's hand. "General, we don't have anything left to fight with. They destroyed everything in orbit," Jake replied. "I know. But we're not surrendering. President Lisa Hart has called an emergency meeting of world leaders. Everyone agrees we fight." Jake felt a bitter laugh escape his throat.
"Fight with what?"
"They have weapons we can't even understand. They cross the solar system in hours. We have rifles and missiles. Nathan's face hardened. Then we fight with rifles and missiles. Jake, we've been monitoring their communications. We had some smart people analyze the patterns. These aliens, they call themselves the Krell Dominion. They've done this before to 43 other species. Every single one surrendered within days. Smart choice, Jake muttered. Maybe. But here's the thing, not one of those species ever fought back. They saw the overwhelming force and gave up. The Krell expect the same from us. Nathan pulled up a holographic display showing the alien ships. We've been sending messages to the stars for 60 years, Jake. We wanted friends. We wanted wise, peaceful aliens to teach us and guide us. The angels never came. Instead, we got demons, so what do? Jake asked. Nathan's smile was cold and sharp. We show them that if the angels never came, Earth can send demons of its own. We fight dirty. We fight mean. We make them regret ever pointing their ships at our planet. Over the next 2 weeks, Jake watched humanity prepare for war. Not the clean, honorable war of movies and stories, but real war. Brutal, desperate, and ugly. Factories retooled to make weapons. Scientists worked on ways to hurt the aliens. Soldiers trained civilians in combat. Children were evacuated to underground bunkers. Dr. Helen Morris, Earth's leading physicist, briefed the command staff on what they knew about Krell technology. It was advanced, yes, but not magic. It could be damaged, disrupted, maybe even copied. The Krell used energy shields that could be overwhelmed with enough firepower. Their ships needed time to recharge between shots. We can hurt them, Helen said, her voice quiet but firm. We just need to be willing to pay the price. On the 14th day, Earth sent its response to the Krell ultimatum. Not in words, but in actions. Every military installation on the planet armed itself. Nuclear missiles pointed skyward. Soldiers took positions in cities. Civilians locked themselves in shelters. President Lisa Hart gave a speech that was broadcast worldwide. She stood in the ruins of the destroyed Mars Station Memorial, her face hard with determination. They came to our home. They killed our people. They demanded our surrender. To the Krell Dominion, we have one message. No, we will not kneel. We will not surrender. If you want Earth, you'll have to take it from our cold, dead hands. And we promise you this. We'll make you bleed for every inch. The Krell fleet responded by launching their invasion force. Dropships fell from orbit like meteors, carrying thousands of alien soldiers. They landed in major cities around the world, expecting quick victory. Jake Morrison stood with a rifle in his hands, surrounded by soldiers and armed civilians. Above them, the alien ships descended through the clouds, their hulls gleaming in the sunlight. Here they come, someone whispered. Jake checked his weapon one last time. Humanity had reached for the stars with open hands, hoping for peace. Now those hands were clenched into fists. The angels never came. Earth would send demons instead. The battle for Earth had begun. The Krell soldiers expected fear. They had conquered 43 species, and each time the pattern was the same. The invaded species would see their superior technology, their overwhelming force, and they would break. Some fought briefly, disorganized and panicked before surrendering. Others simply gave up immediately. The Krell had never faced sustained resistance. Captain Ryan Webb crouched in the ruins of a subway tunnel beneath New York City, listening to the footsteps above. The Krell had landed 3 massive troop carriers in Central Park 2 days ago, and now thousands of alien soldiers patrolled the streets. They were tall creatures nearly 8 feet high with 4 arms and armored skin that could deflect small arms fire. Their weapons fired bolts of superheated plasma that could punch through concrete. Ryan had 20 soldiers with him, survivors from various military units who had regrouped after the initial invasion. They had learned quickly that fighting the Krell in open combat was suicide. The aliens were stronger, better armed, and nearly impossible to kill with conventional weapons, but humans were learning to fight differently. "They're directly above us," whispered Sergeant Kyle Mason, his ear pressed to the tunnel ceiling. "I count 6, maybe 7. Ryan smiled in the darkness. "Good, Amy. Are the charges set?" Amy Chen nodded. She had joined Ryan's resistance cell after the escape pod crash, using her engineering skills to create improvised weapons. Right now she was wiring together explosives made from construction materials and stolen Krell power cells. "Ready when you are, Captain," Amy said. Ryan gave the signal. Amy pressed the detonator and the street above collapsed. The explosion was controlled, precise, dropping an entire section of road into the subway tunnel. The Krell soldiers fell 30 feet. their armor clanging against the metal rails. Before they could recover, Ryan's team opened fire. The key was not to hit the armor. The Krell were nearly invincible from the front. But the collapse had disoriented them, and when they fell, their neck joints were exposed. Ryan's team aimed for those weak points, firing armor-piercing rounds that punched through the softer tissue. 3 Krell died in the first volley. The others tried to return fire, but the narrow tunnel and poor lighting worked against them. Within 90 seconds, all 7 Krell soldiers were dead. Ryan's team moved quickly, stripping the bodies of weapons and equipment before retreating deeper into the tunnel system. They had maybe 10 minutes before Krell reinforcements arrived. "Good work, people," Ryan said as they ran through the darkness. "That's 20 Krell we've killed this week." "Captain, this is just one cell in one city," Kyle said. "How does this win us the war?" Ryan didn't have a good answer. He knew that small victories in subway tunnels wouldn't defeat an interstellar empire. But it was something. It was resistance, and every Krell they killed was one less alien occupying human cities. Around the world, similar resistance cells were forming. In Tokyo, fighters used the dense urban environment to ambush Krell patrols. In London, engineers collapsed buildings onto alien convoys. In Cairo, soldiers lured Krell into the desert and attacked them during sandstorms that disrupted their sensors. The Krell had expected a broken species. Instead, they found humans who fought like cornered animals, vicious and relentless. At a hidden research facility in Colorado, Dr. Helen Morris studied the Krell weapons and armor that resistance cells had captured. Her team worked around the clock, trying to understand alien technology that was centuries ahead of human science. "The plasma weapons use a magnetic containment system," Helen explained to General Nathan Price during a video briefing. "We can't replicate it yet, but we can disrupt it. I've designed an electromagnetic pulse device that shorts out their weapons. It's crude, but it works." "How crude?" Nathan asked. Helen held up a device that looked like it was made from car batteries and copper wire. "It has a range of about 50 feet, and it'll fry every electronic device in that radius, including ours. But it'll give our people a few seconds when the Krell can't shoot back. Every second counts. Get these manufactured and distributed to resistance cells," Nathan ordered. Helen had another discovery, one that surprised everyone. "General, we've been analyzing Krell anatomy from the bodies we've recovered. Their neural structure is different from ours. More complex in some ways, but also slower. Human reflex speeds are actually faster than theirs." Nathan leaned forward. "Are you saying we're quicker than they are?" "In close combat, yes. Their technology gives them a huge advantage at range. But if our people can close the distance, they have a fighting chance. The Krell aren't used to hand-to-hand combat, because none of the species they've conquered could match their physical strength. But humans are adaptable. We can learn to use their size and weight against them." This information spread through resistance networks. Fighters began training in close-quarters combat, learning to dodge plasma fire and get inside the Krell's reach. It was dangerous and many died trying, but some succeeded. Videos of humans killing Krell soldiers with knives and improvised weapons began circulating, boosting morale. Jake Morrison had taken command of a military resistance cell operating out of a bunker system beneath the Rocky Mountains. He trained civilians who had volunteered to fight, teaching them everything he knew about combat and survival. "The Krell think they're fighting a military," Jake told his recruits. "They expect soldiers in uniforms following rules of engagement. That's not what we are. We're civilians, construction workers, teachers, students. We don't have to follow their rules. We hit them where they don't expect, when they don't expect it, and we disappear before they can respond." One of his recruits, a former high school teacher named Greg Fisher, raised his hand. "Commander, how do we beat an enemy with better weapons and armor?" Jake smiled grimly. "We don't fight fair. We use their expectations against them. The Krell have conquered dozens of species, and every single one fought the same way, trying to match military force with military force. They lost because they played by the Krell's rules. We're going to write new rules. The Resistance learned to attack supply lines instead of military bases. They poisoned water sources that the Krell used. They hacked into captured communication equipment and sent false orders. They rigged roads with improvised explosives. They sniped at Krell soldiers from buildings and disappeared into crowds before reinforcements arrived. The Krell commander, Warlord Thex, watched the Resistance reports with growing frustration. His species had conquered their way across the galaxy for 3 centuries, and never had they faced anything like this. The humans were supposed to break. Instead, they fought harder each day. Thex ordered his soldiers to retaliate against human civilians. For every Krell killed, 10 humans would be executed publicly. It was a tactic that had worked on other species, breaking their will to resist. It backfired spectacularly. Instead of intimidating humans, the executions enraged them. Resistance recruitment tripled. Civilians who had been hiding in shelters came out to fight. Even children threw rocks at Krell soldiers and sabotaged their equipment. These creatures are insane, Thex reported to his superiors. They watch us kill their people, and instead of surrendering, they attack us harder. I've never seen anything like it. The response from Krell High Command was simple. Continue the occupation, establish control, and if resistance continues, request authorization for orbital bombardment. 6 months into the invasion, Ryan Webb's cell planned their most ambitious operation yet. The Krell had landed a command ship in Central Park, using it as a coordination hub for their operations in North America. The ship was heavily guarded, with force fields and automated defenses. Amy had spent 3 months studying captured Krell technology, learning how their systems worked. She designed a virus that could infiltrate their network and disable the force fields for exactly 90 seconds. 90 seconds, Ryan repeated. That's not much time. It's all I can give you, Amy said. After that, their systems will reset and will be locked out permanently. Ryan assembled every fighter he could trust. 50 soldiers and armed civilians carrying explosives, electromagnetic pulse devices, and stolen Krell weapons. They would have one chance to strike. The attack began at midnight. Amy activated the virus from a laptop in a building overlooking the park. The Krell ship's shields flickered and died. Ryan's team rushed forward, running across the dark grass toward the ship. Krell guards opened fire, but the EMP devices disrupted their weapons. Humans swarmed over the ship's hull, placing explosives at critical points. The Krell inside scrambled to respond, but they were too slow. 70 seconds after the attack began, Ryan gave the detonation order. The command ship exploded in a ball of fire that lit up the night sky. Pieces of alien metal crashed down across the park. Every Krell inside died instantly, including 3 high-ranking officers. Ryan's team suffered heavy casualties. 23 people died in the attack, including Kyle Mason, who stayed behind to ensure the explosives went off. But the mission succeeded. For the first time since the invasion began, humans had destroyed a major Krell asset. News of the victory spread across resistance networks. If New York could strike back, so could other cities. The fight was far from over, but humanity had drawn blood. They had shown the Krell that Earth would not. The war had been raging for 6 months, and the Krell Dominion was learning an uncomfortable truth. Humans were not like other species. Every conquered race in the Dominion's history had broken within weeks. The humans should have surrendered after losing their orbital defenses. They should have given up after the first wave of occupation forces landed. They should have collapsed after months of brutal fighting. Instead, they fought harder. Warlord Thex stood in the command center of his flagship, watching reports stream in from occupied zones around Earth. 30% casualties. Supply lines constantly disrupted. Communication networks compromised. Soldiers refusing to patrol certain areas after dark because humans hunted them like prey. This is unacceptable, Thex growled to his second officer, Commander Vrix. We control every major military installation on the planet. We have air superiority. Our weapons are centuries ahead of theirs. Why can't we pacify one primitive world? Vrix pulled up a tactical display showing Earth cities. Red marks indicated resistance activity. The entire map was covered in red. The humans don't fight like soldiers, my lord. They fight like insects defending a hive. Every civilian is potentially hostile. They hide weapons in homes, schools, hospitals. They use their own infrastructure against us. Yesterday, a human child led a patrol into an ambush that killed 17 soldiers. Thex slammed his fist against the console. Then we increase retaliation measures. For every Krell killed, we execute 100 humans. We've already tried that, my lord. It only makes them fight harder. I don't understand it. Every other species valued survival above all else. Humans seem to value spite. In Colorado, General Nathan Price coordinated what he called Operation Demon's Rage. Every resistance cell on Earth would strike simultaneously, targeting Krell supply depots. communication hubs, and troop concentrations. The offensive would cost human lives, thousands of them. But Nathan believed it would fragment Krell control. "We're not trying to win a conventional war," Nathan explained to his commanders during a secure video conference. "We're trying to make the occupation so expensive, so painful, that the Krell decide Earth isn't worth the cost. We make them bleed for every inch of ground." Jake Morrison led the strike team assigned to a Krell research facility outside Denver. Intelligence suggested the facility was studying captured humans, trying to understand their biology and psychology. Jake wanted to know why. His team of 30 fighters moved through the mountains at night, avoiding Krell patrols and automated sensors. Amy Chen had developed a coating that confused Krell thermal imaging, making humans harder to detect. It smelled terrible and had to be reapplied every few hours, but it worked. They reached the facility at dawn. The compound was heavily guarded with automated turrets and force field barriers. Jake's team used electromagnetic pulse grenades to disable the outer defenses, then stormed the building in a coordinated assault. The fighting was brutal and close range. Krell soldiers were tough, but Jake's people had learned to aim for weak points: joints, neck seams, the vulnerable spots where armor plates met. They used speed and aggression to overwhelm defenders trained for traditional warfare. Jake fought his way to the central research lab, killing 2 Krell guards with a plasma rifle he'd stripped from a dead alien. Inside the lab, he found something that made his blood run cold. Dozens of containment tubes lined the walls, each holding a human test subject. Some were dead, their bodies dissected and studied. Others were alive but sedated, hooked up to machines that monitored their neural activity. Computer screens showed data analysis in alien script. "What the hell is this?" whispered Greg Fisher, the former teacher who had become one of Jake's best fighters. Amy rushed to the computers, her fingers flying across the interface. She had learned to read basic Krell text over the past months. "They're studying us, not just our biology but our behavior. They're trying to understand why we keep fighting." Jake felt sick. "Can you download the data?" "Already doing it." Amy pulled a storage device from her pack and connected it to the Krell computer. "Jake, you need to see this." According to their research notes, the Krell are terrified of something. Terrified? Of what? Amy pointed to a screen showing a neural comparison chart. "Of us spreading. They're worried that if other conquered species learn about human resistance tactics, their entire empire could collapse. They've kept 43 species enslaved for centuries by convincing them that resistance is hopeless. We're proving it's not." The implications hit Jake like a physical blow. Earth wasn't just fighting for its own survival. Every human who fought back, every Krell soldier killed, every act of defiance was a message to dozens of enslaved species. The Dominion could be hurt. "Download everything," Jake ordered. "Every file, every study, every piece of data. We're taking it all." They rigged the facility to explode and evacuated with the data, and as many surviving human prisoners as they could carry. The explosion destroyed years of Krell research and killed 40 alien scientists and soldiers. Back at command, Dr. Helen Morris analyzed the stolen data with growing excitement. "This changes everything. The Krell have been harvesting biological samples from humans to study our aggression response. They want to know if it's genetic or cultural. They're trying to figure out if other species could learn to fight like we do." General Nathan Price studied the reports. What did they conclude? "That's the beautiful part, they don't know. Human psychology doesn't fit their models. We have this capacity for extreme violence, but also cooperation, creativity, and adaptation. The Krell can't predict what we'll do next because we don't follow their rules." Nathan smiled. It wasn't a pleasant expression. "Good, let's keep surprising them." Operation Demon's Rage launched the next day. Resistance cells worldwide struck Krell positions in coordinated attacks. In Beijing, fighters collapsed tunnels beneath a Krell military base, killing hundreds. In London, a hijacked fuel transport ship crashed into an alien command center. In Mumbai, civilians rioted and overwhelmed Krell garrison forces through sheer numbers. The offensive was devastating for both sides. Human casualties reached into the hundreds of thousands, but Krell casualties were worse, and for the first time, their control over Earth fragmented. Supply lines broke. Communication networks failed. Isolated garrisons found themselves surrounded by hostile human populations. Warlord Thex watched his command structure crumble and made a decision. He sent a message to Krell High Command. "Request authorization for planetary bombardment. Ground occupation has failed." Recommend destruction of human population centers to break resistance. The response came within hours. Authorization granted. Deploy planet killer weapon. Sterilization of Earth approved. The Krell fleet began assembling a massive orbital device, a weapon that could ignite Earth's atmosphere and burn every living thing on the surface. The process would take 72 hours to complete. Human intelligence detected the weapon construction almost immediately. Spy satellites that had somehow survived the initial invasion picked up energy readings from orbit. Dr. Helen Morris identified the weapon type from captured Krell databases. It's a planet killer, she told the emergency council. They're going to burn Earth's atmosphere. We have 3 days. President Lisa Hart looked around the room at the exhausted faces of humanity's remaining leadership. Options? We don't have any, said Admiral Peter Grant, commander of what remained of Earth's naval forces. We have no way to reach orbit. They destroyed all our launch facilities. Not all of them, Jake Morrison said. Everyone turned to look at him. We have hidden bases on the Moon and Mars. Skeleton crews, maybe a dozen ships total. They're maintenance vessels, not warships, but they can fly. Nathan Price understood immediately. A suicide mission. Get close enough to the planet killer to destroy it before activation. It's the only option, Jake said. We retrofit whatever ships we have left with weapons, load them with volunteers, and pray we can reach the target. The silence in the room was heavy. Everyone knew it was a desperate plan with almost no chance of success. But it was the only plan they had. Do it, President Hart ordered. Get those ships ready. I'll call for volunteers. They didn't need to call for volunteers. Within hours, thousands of people offered to crew the suicide mission. Soldiers, civilians, scientists, even children lied about their age trying to get on the ships. Everyone understood. If this mission failed, Earth died. Jake Morrison would command the fleet from a ship they named Defiance. Dr. Helen Morris volunteered to go with them, bringing a weapon she had designed specifically to destroy Krell reactor cores. It was unstable, dangerous, and required manual placement inside the planet killer. It's a one-way trip, Helen told Jake as they prepared to launch. I know. We might not even make it to the target. I know that too. Helen smiled sadly. The angels never came, did they? When we sent all those messages into space hoping for friends, we got monsters instead. Jake checked his equipment one last time. Then we'll be worse monsters. For Earth. 20 ships launched from hidden bases rising from the lunar surface and Martian colonies. They were maintenance vessels, mining ships, and transport crafts hastily fitted with weapons and armor. Against the Krell armada, they looked like toys. The fleet of 20 human ships looked pathetic against the Krell armada. Mining vessels, transport crafts, and maintenance ships that had been hidden on the Moon and Mars, hastily armed with whatever weapons humanity could scrape together. They faced an orbital defense network designed to stop military invasions. Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Defiance, watching the planet killer weapon grow larger on the view screen. The massive orbital device hung in space like a mechanical moon, already charging its atmospheric ignition sequence. In 47 hours it would activate and burn Earth alive. All ships, this is Morrison, Jake said over the communication channel. You know the mission. You know the odds. Nobody expects to survive this. But maybe, just maybe, we can take that weapon down before it fires. For Earth. For everyone we've lost. For everyone still fighting down there. The responses came back one by one. 20 ships, 400 volunteers who had said goodbye to their families and accepted death as the price of resistance. Defiance, this is the hammer. We're with you to the end. Defiance, this is redemption. Let's show them what humans do when cornered. Defiance, this is last stand. No retreat, no surrender. On Earth, Ryan Webb led what remained of his resistance cell in New York. They had received word about the suicide mission and the planet killer weapon. General Nathan Price had ordered every resistance group worldwide to launch simultaneous attacks, drawing Krell forces away from orbital defense. This is it, Ryan told his fighters as they prepared to assault a Krell garrison. Everything we've done for the past 6 months comes down to this. Our people in space need time, and we're going to buy it for them with Krell blood. Amy Chen checked the explosive charges she had prepared. We've lost so many people, Ryan. Greg, Kyle, hundreds of others. Was it worth it? Ryan thought about that question. He remembered the day the Krell arrived when humanity learned they were not alone, and that the universe was hostile. He remembered the first battles, The desperate fighting, the small victories, and massive losses. I don't know if it was worth it, Ryan said honestly, but it was necessary. We fought because the alternative was slavery or extinction. Maybe that's all the justification we need. The ground offensive began at dawn. Across every continent, human resistance cells attacked Krell positions with suicidal fury. They weren't trying to win battles or hold territory. They were trying to create chaos, to force the Krell to commit forces to the surface instead of orbital defense. In Tokyo, fighters detonated a massive bomb beneath a Krell command center. In Cairo, resistance forces overran an ammunition depot. In London, civilians stormed a garrison with nothing but improvised weapons and rage. The Krell commanders on Earth called for reinforcements, pulling ships from orbit to deal with the planet-wide uprising. It worked. Orbital defense forces thinned as vessels descended to help ground troops. In space, Jake's fleet accelerated toward the planet killer. The Krell defenses opened fire at extreme range. Energy beams and plasma missiles streaked across the void. The first human ship, a transport named Hope's End, exploded when a plasma burst punched through its hull. Evasive maneuvers, Jake ordered. All ships scatter in advance. Make them split their fire. The human ships broke formation, each vessel taking a different approach vector. The Krell defense grid tried to track all 20 targets at once and struggled. The weapons were designed for organized military formations, not for desperate ships attacking from random directions. 3 more ships died in the approach. Then 2 more. The survivors pushed forward, their hulls scorched and damaged, leaking atmosphere and fuel. They fired everything they had. Missiles cobbled together from mining explosives, kinetic rounds, even nuclear warheads that humanity had kept in storage for generations. The Krell defense stations began to fail under the assault. Humans had learned from 6 months of warfare that Krell technology, while advanced, had limits. Their shields needed time to recharge. Their weapons overheated after sustained fire. Push them hard enough, fast enough, and they made mistakes. "We're through the outer defense grid," reported the captain of the Hammer. "Closing on the planet killer. 15 ships remaining." Then the Krell fleet carriers launched their fighters. Hundreds of small, fast ships that swarmed the human vessels like angry insects. The battle became a desperate knife fight in the vacuum of space. The Hammer died protecting the Defiance, ramming a Krell carrier that had moved to intercept. The explosion took out both ships and cleared a path. 10 ships left, Jake said quietly. "Keep moving forward." On the planet killer weapon itself, Krell soldiers scrambled to defensive positions. They had never expected humans to reach this far. The planet killer was supposed to be untouchable, protected by the might of the Dominion fleet. Dr. Helen Morris prepared her weapon, a device that would destabilize the planet killer's reactor core. It looked crude, wires and components jury-rigged together, but Helen had designed it with one purpose: maximum destruction. "Jake, I need to plant this inside the core chamber," Helen said. "The detonation timer is 30 seconds. Whoever places it has to stay and make sure the Krell can't disarm it." Jake understood. "We knew it was one way. I'll take it." "Like hell you will," Helen replied. "You're the fleet commander. These people need you to coordinate the attack. Besides, I built this thing. I know how it works. This is my job." The Defiance crashed into the planet killer's docking bay, its hull tearing through the alien structure. The remaining human ships followed, each one a missile aimed at the massive weapon. They landed hard and crews poured out with weapons ready. The fighting inside the planet killer was brutal. Krell soldiers fought desperately to protect the weapon, knowing that if it was destroyed, their mission to sterilize Earth would fail. Human fighters pushed forward with the ferocity of cornered animals. Jake led his team toward the reactor core, fighting through corridors filled with aliens. They used captured Krell weapons and human determination. When ammunition ran out, they fought with knives, fists, and anything they could grab. Halfway to the core, they encountered Warlord Thex himself. The massive Krell commander stood in their path, armed with a plasma sword and personal shield generator. "You should have surrendered," Thex said in perfect English. "Your species could have lived under Dominion rule. Instead, you chose extinction." Jake raised his weapon. "We chose freedom. You came to our home. You killed our people. You gave us no choice but to become demons." They fought. Thex was stronger, faster, and better armed. He killed 3 of Jake's team in the first seconds of combat. But humans had learned to fight Krell in close quarters. Jake dodged the plasma sword, rolled under Thex's guard, and fired his rifle into the warlord's neck joint at point-blank range. Thex fell, and Jake's team pushed forward. They reached the reactor core chamber with Helen and her weapon. The massive reactor pulsed with energy, preparing for the atmospheric ignition sequence. "I've got this," Helen said, moving toward the core with her device. Helen. "Wait," Jake began. "No time for arguments, Commander." Helen smiled at him. "Someone has to stay. Someone has to make sure this works. That person is me. Now get your people out of here." Jake wanted to argue, but he knew she was right. "It's been an honor, Doctor." "The honor was mine. Now go. Get back to Earth. Tell them we won." Jake and his team retreated as Helen placed the device against the reactor core. Krell soldiers burst into the chamber, trying to stop her. Helen activated the weapon's timer and stood between it and the aliens, using her own body as a shield. 30 seconds. Jake's team ran through the corridors, heading for the Defiance. Behind them, they heard plasma fire and Helen scream. She had bought them time with her life. 20 seconds, they reached the ship. Only 6 of them left now, out of the 20 crews that had launched. Jake ordered emergency launch as Krell soldiers swarmed the docking bay. 10 seconds. The Defiance tore free from the planet killer, engines burning at maximum thrust. Around them, 3 other human ships managed to launch. The rest were still trapped inside. 0. The planet killer exploded. Not a simple explosion, but a cascade reaction that consumed the entire weapon and half the Krell fleet in orbit. The shockwave caught the fleeing human ships and threw them spinning through space. Jake's head cracked against the console. Through blurred vision, he saw Earth on the view screen, beautiful and blue and still alive. The planet killer was gone. The threat was destroyed. Then the Defiance's damaged systems failed and everything went dark. On Earth, Ryan Webb watched the sky light up as the orbital explosion created a second sun. The Krell soldiers around him stopped fighting, staring upward in shock. Their weapon was destroyed. Their fleet was shattered. "They did it," Amy whispered. "They actually did it." The Krell invasion had lost its teeth. Without orbital supremacy and facing continued resistance, Dominion forces on Earth began to retreat. They boarded their remaining ships and fled, leaving equipment and wounded behind. Humanity had won, but the cost was terrible. Millions dead, cities destroyed, and somewhere in orbit, Jake Morrison and the heroes of the Defiance drifted in space, their fate unknown. Ryan looked at the brightening sky and whispered, "The angels never came, but Earth sent demons, and demons don't surrender." The explosion of the planet killer had lit up Earth's sky like a second sunrise, and in that moment, the Krell Dominion's grip on humanity shattered. Without orbital supremacy and facing relentless resistance, alien forces on Earth began a chaotic retreat. Ships lifted off from occupied cities, leaving behind equipment and wounded soldiers in their rush to escape. But humanity wasn't finished. Not by a long shot. General Nathan Price stood in the emergency command center, watching reports stream in from around the world. The Krell were retreating, yes, but they were retreating to their strongholds in the outer solar system. They still had ships, weapons, and the backing of a galactic empire. "We can't let them regroup," Nathan said to the assembled commanders. "If we give them time to call reinforcements, they'll come back stronger. We need to hit them now while they're broken and scared." "With what?" asked Admiral Peter Grant. "We have maybe 30 ships left total, and most of those are barely spaceworthy. The Krell still have 100 vessels out by Jupiter." Nathan smiled, and it was a cold expression. "Then we use what we've always used, human stubbornness and alien technology. We've been studying their equipment for 6 months. We've captured ships, weapons, and computers. Now we're going to use them." The plan was insane, which made it perfectly human. Resistance cells had captured several intact Krell transport ships during the retreat. Engineers had been studying them, learning how the alien technology worked. Now they would crew those ships and take the fight to the enemy. Jake Morrison woke up in a medical bay, his head pounding and his body covered in bruises. The Defiance had been recovered by a rescue ship, drifting in orbit with minimal life support. Of the 4 ships that had escaped the planet killer, only 2 survived with living crews. A nurse, a young man named Paul Carter, smiled when he saw Jake awake. "Welcome back, Commander. You've been out for 3 days. Earth?" Jake asked, his voice hoarse. "Still here. Still fighting. The Krell are retreating, but General Price is planning a counteroffensive. He wants you to lead it." Jake tried to sit up and immediately regretted it. Everything hurt. "Lead it with what?" "Captured Krell ships. We've been reverse engineering their technology. It's not pretty, but it works. The general thinks that with captured ships and human tactics, we can hurt them badly enough that they'll think twice about coming back. Over the next 2 weeks, humanity prepared for its first offensive operation. Engineers worked around the clock to retrofit captured Krell ships with human weapons and controls. Pilots trained on alien interfaces. Soldiers learned to operate Krell armor and weapons. It wasn't just about technology. Amy Chen had developed a sophisticated virus based on her earlier work, one that could infiltrate Krell computer networks and spread chaos. Dr. Helen Morris had left behind research notes for disrupting Krell shield generators. Every piece of knowledge gained from 6 months of desperate fighting was now being weaponized. Ryan Webb, promoted to colonel after his actions in New York, led the first ground assault team. They would board Krell vessels and take them by force, using the close combat tactics that humans had perfected against the larger, stronger aliens. Remember, Ryan told his teams during the final briefing, the Krell expect traditional warfare. They expect ship-to-ship combat at range, with shields and energy weapons. They don't expect us to board their ships and fight them hand-to-hand. We're going to use that against them. Jake commanded the space fleet from a captured Krell cruiser that humanity had renamed the Vengeance. It was a fitting name for a ship crewed by people who had watched their world burn and decided to burn back. The fleet consisted of 15 captured Krell ships and 20 retrofitted human vessels. Against 100 Krell ships, it should have been suicide. But humans had something the Krell didn't. 6 months of experience fighting an enemy that should have been invincible. They struck the Krell staging ground near Jupiter with coordinated fury. Human ships came in fast and aggressive, using tactics that violated every rule of traditional space combat. They rammed enemy vessels, detonated nuclear weapons at point-blank range, and used their own ships as missiles when necessary. Ryan's boarding teams launched in small craft, latching onto Krell ships and cutting through hulls with plasma torches. Once inside, they fought through corridors with brutal efficiency, killing or capturing crew members. Some teams took ships intact. Others sabotaged reactors and escaped just before detonation. The virus Amy had designed spread through Krell networks, causing weapons to misfire, shields to drop at critical moments, and navigation systems to fail. Chaos rippled through the enemy fleet. Jake watched the battle unfold from the Vengeance's command deck. It was working. The Krell were powerful, but they fought according to established doctrine. Humans threw out the rules and improvised. When shields held, they rammed. When weapons failed, they boarded. When ships were damaged beyond repair, they turned them into bombs. The battle lasted 18 hours. When it ended, 70 Krell ships were destroyed or captured. The remaining 30 fled into deep space. Humanity had won its first offensive victory, but the war was far from over. News of Earth's resistance had spread across the galaxy through captured Krell communications. Other conquered species, enslaved for generations, began asking dangerous questions. If humans could fight back successfully, why couldn't they? The Krell Dominion faced its worst nightmare, a rebellion that spread like fire across their empire. On worlds they had controlled for centuries, conquered species rose up. They used human tactics, human weapons designs, and human fury. The empire that had seemed eternal began to crack. 1 year after the first invasion, humanity's fleet arrived at the Krell homeworld. The journey had been long and costly, fought across dozens of star systems. Earth's forces had liberated 3 conquered species and destroyed Krell military installations throughout the sector. The Krell expected negotiation or siege. Instead, they received a broadcast on every communication channel. President Lisa Hart's face appeared on screens across the Krell homeworld. 1 year ago, you came to Earth expecting easy conquest. You destroyed our orbital defenses. You occupied our cities. You killed millions of our people. We asked for mercy. We begged you to leave. You responded with violence. Hart paused, letting that sink in. So we became violent. We learned to fight like demons because angels never came when we called for help. Now you face a choice, total surrender or total war. Disarm your military. Pay reparations for the lives you destroyed. Release every species you've enslaved. Or we will burn your empire to ash, one world at a time. The Krell High Council watched the broadcast in their chambers, faces unreadable. They had ruled an empire for 3 centuries, conquering species after species. Now they faced creatures they could not break, could not intimidate, could not defeat. How did this happen? asked one council member. They're primitives. They shouldn't have been able to resist for a week, much less fight us to a standstill. The military commander, one of the few survivors from the Earth occupation, spoke quietly. We made assumptions. We thought they were like the other species we conquered. We were wrong. Humans are predators. They evolved on a death world where everything tried to kill them. They developed cooperation, creativity, and a capacity for violence that exceeds anything in Dominion records. We didn't conquer Earth. We provoked a species that learned to be demons. The Krell surrendered, not just to Earth, but to the reality that their empire was crumbling. Rebellions raged across dozens of worlds. Their military couldn't fight on all fronts. The cost of maintaining the occupation would bankrupt them. Earth received reparations, technology, resources, and the release of all conquered species. The Dominion didn't dissolve completely, but it transformed from empire to federation, forced to negotiate with species it had once enslaved. Jake Morrison returned to Earth a year and a half after the invasion began. He was promoted to admiral, though he felt like a fraud wearing the uniform. Too many people had died. Too many heroes had sacrificed themselves for victory. He visited the memorial wall in Washington, where names of the fallen covered black granite stretching for miles. Helen Morris was there along with Kyle Mason, Greg Fisher, and thousands of others. Jake placed his hand on Helen's name and stood in silence. You thinking about the cost? Jake turned to see Ryan Webb, now a general, standing beside him. Always, Jake replied. We won, but was it worth this? Ryan was quiet for a moment. I don't know if worth it is the right question. We fought because the alternative was extinction or slavery. We became demons because the universe sent demons first. Maybe that's enough. They walked together through the memorial gardens. Earth was rebuilding. Cities rose from ruins. Farms grew food using Krell agricultural technology. Children attended schools where they learned both human history and alien science. Amy Chen had become the head of Earth's new science division, leading research into peaceful applications of captured technology. She refused military honors, saying she was just an engineer who did what needed to be done. General Nathan Price became Earth's first ambassador to the galactic community. His message to other species was simple and direct. Humanity reached for the stars hoping to find friends. We found predators instead. We fought because we had no choice. But now we